to me, the hardest thing about this Enagic company is a distributor will go out, do a great demonstration, explain the water, and the people that see this are just amazed. And then they walk away and they'll get on the computer and they'll type up Kangen water. And what happens is that all the cheap knockoffs, and by the way, there's 2 companies, Emcotech and Royal Water, and they make 99% of all the water ionizers on the planet. So if I want my own water ionizer,
Royal is a subsidiary of Emco.
Yeah. Oh, well, there you go. So there's actually one company. And they make all these water ionizers, and they say that they're just as good as Enagic, but they're cheaper and better, actually. So Dr. Michael Donaldson is a great reference for this. Any type of water ionizer competitor unit that you've seen on the market, he has purchased 7 of them. Actually, more than that. But when he first started up, why don't you tell your story?
I've tested a bunch of them. Yeah, I didn't get into the water because it was a great business opportunity or I wanted to be healthy. I did it because my daughter was sick in the hospital. And anybody can log on and go to my channel on Dr. Michael Explains on YouTube. You'll see Skylar, you'll see all the pictures. She was literally born inside out. So she was at Scottish Rite for a year trying to get all the pieces put back inside. And she had a couple of colostomies. She had a resection. They removed part of her bowel. She had a Mickey button. She was in the hospital for a year. And the biggest complication with gastroschisis, which basically everything from her stomach, liver, pancreas, spleen, small intestine, large intestine were on the outside. Hold on 1 second.
So, you know, he's actually been an expert on this. He had 7 water ionizers before he even heard of the Kangen one and wasn't getting results with them either. But he knows more about this than anybody I know. Go ahead.
Oh, anyway, sorry about that. Everybody decided it was a good time to go in the kitchen and make as much noise as possible. 5 kids, love life, 2 dogs. It's great. Actually, my kids are amazing and I love them all. But it's funny because it's like they'll strategically wait until they get on a webinar and then it's like every pot and pan that they need in the back of the drawer underneath every other one. And anyways, you know how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
And so with Skylar, what it ended up being is dehydration syndrome was a main complication. So when they sent her home, her second year, she had over 100 hours a week of home health care. And we nearly lost her several times. It was a rough time, I'm not gonna lie. And dehydration was the culprit. And so you'd rush to the hospital and they would just be dumping fluids in because when the bowel shuts down, it couldn't absorb water. And historically, that's the way you get water into the body. You drink water and it goes into your bowel and it finally absorbs. And with Skylar, when the bowel shut down, it wouldn't absorb. It was just nothing. And so we went through every pill, potion, snake oil, woo-woo, whatever you want to do. And then we went through every type of water you can imagine, water ionizers. We tested a bunch of them. And for the most part, all of my kids got sick when I used an alkaline water ionizer. And with all the biofeedback we did, we were like, oh, wow, we're getting metal toxicity from the machines. So I was one of the more adamant people opposed to these machines because of the danger. And then, you know, translate ahead, she's now 3 years old, 3.5. And this lady comes in as a patient and she is just like, I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you, you know, and it's like this unrelenting, you know, I needed the very thing that I'm opposed to. Overbearing, unrelenting, never say no type thing. And basically what happened was she came into the office to get adjusted and the doctor's office called and said, Skylar's at failure to thrive and we don't know what to do. And she literally said, Skylar doesn't have to suffer because you're too stubborn to try the water. I'll give it to you for free. And I was pissed. I wasn't upset. I was pissed. And I was ready to light her up. And then I was just like, you know what? Just shut up and try it. Just try it. And I said, fine, bring your water. I'll give it to her for a month. and then we'll run this test. And if there's no change, you have to quit the company. And she said, okay. And she brought water in. Long story short, 4 days later, 50–80% of her symptoms had started to subside. I had to ask for more water. 10 days out, she had her first solid bowel movement. I bought a water machine. And it wasn't because of anything. It was simply that my daughter pooped. And she had her first solid bowel movement. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so then I started to do research, and alkalinity had nothing to do with it. And there's molecular hydrogen. And what was helping her was actually the hydroxide ions. And I'm like, well, nobody told me this. And so then I started to test every machine that there was. And so I went through, gosh, I've probably evaluated 40 different machines, maybe 45. Because I wasn't looking at it like, oh, wow, this is a great supplementary income. This isn't a side hustle. This is, I can help people. This is, I need this for my daughter. And it's whatever is best for her, I'll be glad to help people. And so it really was from that mindset. And I really, you know, I'd seen all the literature. I'd heard all the hustle, and I'd talked to all the competitors. And like I said, I'd been through 7 or 8 different machines. And long story short, of all the machines I've tested, this one just keeps coming up to the top.
Okay,
but
Dr. Michael?
Yeah.
I don't want to get too ahead of yourself. So how did you first hear about ionized water in the first place?
Oh, I'm a chiropractor, and, you know, we had an alternative wellness center. We had foot baths, lasers. I mean, a lot of the laser work that people are seeing today, I pioneered a lot of the protocols, 15 years ago, like laser allergy, emotional recalibration. I did all the original work for that with the SpectraVision and biofeedback. 2000, 2005.
Okay, so
Before
you got this
Skylar.
technology, and you went and bought a machine. What can you name your first machine that you bought?
I'd rather not, just because
Okay.
it creates all kinds of liability. But if you Google any machine, I've tried it.
So you actually tried 7 different machines and gave
Before
up
the
on it.
Enagic, and then probably another 35 or 40.
So 7 before, and you basically, when this lady said, no, you need to try the Kangen water, and you just went, you know what? I've already been through 7 of these machines. Nothing.
Well, I did, because there's so much damage that's created because the plates delaminate, and the platinum comes off. They burn, they scorch. Like I said on YouTube, there's a big, long, like overly detailed explains the competition, and it shows burned plates, mold in the lines, all that stuff. And so even after we had the Enagic machine, I kept testing other machines to find something that was a newer, better technology.
And so on top of that, you've had 7 machines before you tried the Enagic one, and before that, your family was getting metal toxicity poisoning.
And mold issues and all that stuff, because when they say that their machine never needs cleaning, because the plates never build up with calcium, that's their disclaimer. They don't discuss the mold in the lines. So if you just take your coffee pot and leave water on it and go on vacation for the weekend or a 4-day weekend, you start to get a film in the tanks and in the lines and all that stuff. None of the machines that self-clean get rid of any of that. What happens is, if this is a plate, positive side, negative side, they reverse the current. And so this becomes the negative side, and this is the positive side now. And so the calcium blows off because it repels the negative ion. So you never get calcium buildup on your plates. That's cleaning the machine. Technically accurate, doesn't address mold, doesn't address fungus, bacteria before the plates, anything like that.
And therefore, also, the machines can't make the 2.5, 11.5.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you want me to, like, hit the details, I mean, you can talk about, like, every machine does what it says it's claimed to do. Like, there's machines out there that have a higher ORP than ours. It just lasts for 20 minutes. So you can, like, fill your water bottle, go to the gym, and by the time you get there, you've got acid water again. But it does produce it. It does produce what it's saying it produces. You know, so then when you look at, like, well, ours produces more molecular hydrogen. Yay, great. That's one piece. What about the level of active oxygen? What about the hydroxide ions? What about the ORP? What about hypochlorous acid? What about strong 11.5 for removing pesticides? Don't forget the beauty water. What about the fact that you can manually clean, and we have a whole team ready to disengage what's built into the system through a manual technical cleaning that you send it in and get it managed, or a warranty that isn't voided every time they change the name of the company or discontinue the part. So when you have 10 or 11, 12 categories, and this machine wins in one category, it may be 8 to 10% better in one category, but at an overall, it doesn't have any of it. Well, now you're talking about a machine that's 1/10, that's 10% of what you've got. And when you look, the big thing is when you use a smaller or thin plate, I was just explaining this to you.
Let's talk about that.
So we're just going to say these are coasters because they're in front of me. And I have 2 coasters here. And if you look, well, we have the same surface area. Number 1, they don't. It's like this big. The surface area is at least half. But we'll just say, for sake of example, that we have identical sized plates. This machine is designed to use a 1/2 amp because it is a power saving unit. This machine, however, requires almost 3 amps. That's because the plate is twice as thick, which means it has twice as much material, which means if you were to take the plates out of a cheaper machine and put it in ours, you would literally melt the plate. It just can't handle the current. And you can ask any electrician, heck, anybody that has a basic knowledge of electricity will tell you, the voltage doesn't matter. It's the amperage that'll kill you. And so that's what gives it the ability to maintain, you know, even our cheap machine, which is what, 1980, holds its charge for 24 to 36 hours. You know, one of the big machines, there's one brand out there that's like, we have 12 plates or 14 plates. And we have an ORP of negative 1200. You fill the water bottle and before lunch at 9 o'clock and before lunchtime, it's completely reverted back because it doesn't have enough power to create a stable ionization that makes it whole. But it's only $3,700, so it's cheaper.
Right.
Except for the fact that you've got nothing.
Plus, as Laura Tosher was talking about, the metal that they use, she was saying that it's they say it's platinum. It's actually a platinum amalgam. That's like 30% platinum and 70% of the metals. It's not even pharmaceutical grade. And their titanium, the same thing. It's not pharmaceutical grade, whereas ours is 100% pharmaceutical
it's the porous feature on the surface of that electron plate.
I'm sorry?
It's the porous level on that electrode plate. The more porous it is, the faster it wears out. And so what you're talking about is the surface indentation. And yeah, Lori's got a great thing. She blows it up and you can actually look at it like a smooth surface versus all cratered and all kind of things. And when you get into medical grade materials, you're dealing with a level of porousness. And the more porous, it just isn't going to last. And see, when you start to look at the warranties, they'll give a lifetime warranty. Too specific, Jupiter, lifetime warranty. I had a Royal by Emcotech, lifetime warranty. However, as soon as the company gets bought out and name changes, the warranty is voided. It's interesting that the company got bought out in a name change, but maintained the same owners. It's a method by which they can legally void the warranty.
So let's just jump into a hypothetical here. If a person, say I go and I have somebody that says, hey, John, I found this Tyant machine, for instance, that says they're better and they're cheaper also. What's the first thing that how would your conversation start? Like the first 5-10 sentences, what would you say to the person?
Well, one, it doesn't compare to an SD501 or a K8 because while the ORP is high, it only lasts for a few hours. And 2, it doesn't produce hypochlorous acid. It doesn't produce the 11.5 strong for, you know, cleaning and degreasing. So it's actually comparable to our R unit for 1980.
Okay. All right.
Except our R unit tomorrow morning is still going to have a positive ORP, but at lunchtime you won't with your tie-in.
Okay. So now, as far as like diabetes and things like that and different health conditions, clinical research with a worldwide variety of conditions like cancer, diabetes, inflammation, Crohn's, IBS, dementia, etc. What makes this special?
Wow, let's just make it one complicated question. So everybody is on the molecular hydrogen kick because Tyler LeBrun is a PhD and he did his thesis on molecular hydrogen and he did some phenomenal research. So everybody kind of jumped on the molecular hydrogen. And molecular hydrogen is amazing specifically for things that pertaining to the nervous system, the brain, peripheral and central nerves, regenerating sheaths, things like that. When you look at electrolyzed reduced water, molecular hydrogen has an amazing potential there. If you look at cancer patients, cancer actually has a primary cause where if you reduce the level of oxygen, which is a byproduct, active oxygen, at the level of the mitochondria, it shuts down and doesn't produce ATP, which is enough energy to make the cell work. So we're just going to say that you have enough oxygen and it has a hydrogen charged membrane and the oxygen goes in to make energy in the Krebs cycle. And then it spits out 36 gallons of gas. Well, if you don't have enough oxygen burning, it shuts that down and kind of switches over to glycolysis, which produces 4 gallons of energy. So as soon as you can reactivate the mitochondria and get it working correctly, you have 900% more energy on a cellular level. But that's totally different than somebody that has like diabetes, where what's really important is 1 part oxygen and 2 parts the hydroxide. Because you can ask any diabetic, well, why do you have diabetes? And what does it mean? Well, my tissues are insulin resistant. Cool, what does that mean? I can't get insulin in? Well, why can't you? I don't know. Did you eat too much sugar? No, I've been doing really good, but my sugar's high. Right. And so what happens is you've got a compounding effect that your body burns proteins to produce sugars called glyconeogenesis, but you build up glucagon inside the cell, which is what makes you cellular insulin resistant. And the hydroxide ion flushes out. So now with the glucagon gone, you can actually get the insulin back into the cell. And that's all clinical research for electrolyzed reduced water that's been around for years. Now, disclaimer, we don't have specific studies that I'm aware of. There are some being done by Dr. Horst Filzer for the Enagic machine version specifically, but they've been using this technology in other countries for 40 years, and that's where a lot of the research came from. But it's the most powerful electrolyzed reduced water machine that I know of that you can buy for the home use, is the K8. It just is. And that doesn't even get into the fact that it also produces 2.5 hypochlorous, which is what you use in Japan. They use it for, you know, cleaning and sterilization of hospitals, wound care centers, but it's also used for gangrene, diabetic ulcers, wounds that won't heal, psoriasis, eczema. And that's all part of the standard medical procedure in Japan, which is, you know, we've migrated. I've just finished up the doctor's manual and we're launching that platform. So if you have any healthcare providers here that want to know how to implement electrolyzed reduced water into their practice, whether it's for neurology or cancer or diabetes, we have a whole manual that's set up for that. You can get implementation, you can get research, you can get emails. You know, I've got a couple dozen Dr. Michael Explains videos that have already been done that aren't released to anybody but on my team. And, you know, when people buy in, they'll get access to all that stuff as well.
So does the electrical charge also help with the process with the cells?
Absolutely. The higher the electric charge, that's actually what, so here's another question that everybody wants to know. Microclustering. Microclustering, it doesn't exist in the scientific world as much as it does in the marketing world. What it does is it represents a scientific concept. It's easier to say microcluster, so you have a smaller cluster of molecules, than it is to say that this cluster of molecules has a low electrostatic charge on its outer rim electron, causing it to clump together. And the higher the outer rim electron, and the more excited it is, the more they repel each other. So you mean the more electricity, the more they scatter? Yeah. The clusters get smaller, they're scattered, and you get better hydration.
So with your daughter, I know with your daughter, for instance, not being able to absorb water or hydrogen and any of the elements because of the bowel shutting down. This water, can you explain, and that basically goes into why this water is able to be absorbed so quickly, where most water, 20 to 30% of the water is able to be absorbed, whereas this one gets absorbed, 90% of it gets absorbed before it hits a duodenal sweep. Huh?
So with Skylar, for instance, we had a incident where her bowel shut down and she was going into dehydration syndrome. And the way that you can tell is they literally start to lose weight. You can lose a ½ pound to a pound. And you're like, whoa, we need to go to the hospital. So what I did with Skylar at that time is I filled the sink with 11.5. While I was getting ready, I had to go grab a couple things. And so I just filled the sink with 11.5 and set her in there and went to weigh her before I left. And it was normal. And I was like, how did that happen? She literally hydrated right through her skin, which was just mind-boggling. We won't even get into that. But then once you start looking at like the Anespa and stuff, you realize just how much chlorine your body absorbs in your bath, your shower, your pool, your hot tub. Your body, I've gone to later, continued to go on and found out that your body will actually absorb the equivalent of a gallon of whatever water you're soaking in. Whatever contaminants are in a gallon of that water, that's how much you absorb through your skin. So, you know, kids used to go to the pool and play for 6, 10, 12 hours. Well, 6 hours of playing in a pool that's loaded with way too much chlorine, you just absorbed it's the equivalent as if you drank 6 gallons of that much water for chlorine, just absorbed through your skin. And so it's pretty outrageous. So now even my hot tub has an Anespa in it. It's got all the minerals and filtration and all that good stuff. You're on mute. What happens is your brain has an entrance. So we'll use my head. There's an entrance and an exit. And what happens is as water comes in, the hydroxide binds to the metabolic waste. The waste is exited, but now you've brought in hydrogen and oxygen. The waste goes out. If you become partially dehydrated, the exit closes. So now you get a buildup of toxic burden. And you slow down the ability to absorb because the tissues are toxic and full. So when you drink electrolyzed reduced water, the first thing that it does is it just opens the gates so that you can now flush all the garbage out. When you get a buildup of acid waste, you can demyelinate the nerves, you can reduce level of oxygen uptake, just a whole series of things. For instance, most of your RO waters, any bottled water has to be run through an RO machine as a rule. And basically what that does is it kills the water and it makes it non-permeable to the blood-brain barrier. So you're getting like, if you drink 4 bottles of, take your favorite bottled water, you drink 4 of those bottles, only 1 bottle percentage-wise actually makes it into the cells. Maybe 2 out of 4. When you drink 4 bottles of this type of Kangen water, you know, 3 3/4 of the bottles make it into your cells. Your hydration is just way higher.
Can you get into a little bit about I love the way you explain the Anespa, and I think there really needs to go.
Hold on, one quick thing to add. And somebody brought this point up and it kind of blew his own mind. I said, yeah, there's a lot of bad water in your drinking water. And so he turns on the machine and he's like, dude, like I'm drinking out of the top hose, right? Yeah. Well, what can I do with the bottom hose? I'm like, you get rid of it. Dude, that's a lot of water. I said, yeah, that's the bad portion of the water you don't want to drink. It's got all the toxicity in it. He goes, what? All that water is the bad water? And I'm like, yeah, that's what we're saying. No, dude, you don't understand. It's like a 60-40 split. And I'm like, no, I do understand. You're right. And he's like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, you can put it in plants. Just be careful not to kill them. He's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea like that much of the water was bad water. So, yeah. So what happens with the Anespa, which was your next question, I freely admit to being hard-headed and stubborn. And so while it took a daughter in the hospital to actually try the water, I had it for probably a year before I ever cleaned my first fruit or veggie. And then I'd had it for 3 or 4 years before I ever even tried the Anespa, because I'm like, I'm not going to spend that money for a chlorine filter. And we went to a friend's house that was on a well, and he's like, I don't have chlorine. It's got those rocks from Japan. What do you mean it's got rocks from Japan? Well, the tufa minerals, I didn't realize this, but the Japanese hot springs are actually managed by the Ministry of Health in Japan. They're regulated, they're controlled, they're tested, they're like militant about it. And the #1 hot spring in the world is in Hokkaido, Japan. It's Futamata Hot Springs. And what the owner of Enagic did, Mr. Oshira, is he bought the mineral rights. And so he bought the mineral rights and he put it into this shower unit. So when you're actually just taking a regular shower, you're getting the equivalent of soaking in a Japanese hot spring for 10, 20, however long you're in the shower or the bath. In Japan, if you go in and you have cuts or sores or bumps or bruises or endocrine stress or low thyroid or psoriasis or any of that, they say go soak in the hot springs for 20 minutes, 2 to 3 times a week, and it'll be gone in a couple of weeks. And you have that same shower unit now in your home. And some of us in our hot tub. Mute.
What about the turmeric?
Okay, so turmeric is one of those crazy things. It's ginger. It's a form of ginger. And again, I was like, I didn't really do anything with it. It was kind of sold as a placeholder, which I thought was weird. The reality of turmeric is if you actually start to do Google research on turmeric and curcuminoids, which is the active part of the turmeric, you'll find that there's like 6,000 research articles and conditions that this stuff helps with, because it's a very powerful anti-inflammatory antioxidant that actually gets into the cellular matrix. And I mean, you can check it. It works with diabetics and cancer. I mean, there's just research like everywhere. And again, Mr. Oshiro was like, hey, look, Okinawa's got, my hometown's got some of the best land in the world for growing turmeric. So he sets it up so that what they ended up doing is they actually mowed down Japanese forest land in Okinawa to create virgin soil to plant the fields. And then they use the trees to make what's called a bohash, which is an organic fertilizer. And then they spliced out and made all these turmerics. They irrigated the fields with the water. They processed it with the 2.5. Hey, Carolyn. And then they ended up processing it with the 11.5. And so it's never been touched with chemicals. It's in virgin soil that's never been depleted. It's irrigated with high energy water. And then it's packaged in such a way that it doesn't oxidize right away. Because the biggest problem with like, well, how would I buy expensive turmeric if I can get it at the grocery store? Well, as soon as you open that jar of spice, within 48 to 96 hours, 3 or 4 days, it's oxidized and it's just a spice. It's lost its curcuminoid potential. Well, what they solved with Enagic and why they have a patent is your last capsule is every bit as powerful and potent as your first capsule. So you get no oxidative stress damage to the capsules itself. I personally prefer the tea over the capsules, just it's one of those things where some people say, well, you just take a supplement because you know it's good for you. And I do that because that's what I'm supposed to do. But as a rule, if I drink, I'll have a cup of Ukon tea in the morning, and then I just take the tea bag and leave it in my water bottle and drink it for the rest of the day. And if I'm 50, so sometimes those mornings are a little bit stiffer. If I'm drinking the Ukon, I'm not stiff, I'm not sore, my feet don't ache, my energy's good. I'll still take a couple capsules during the day. But the tea, I really notice a difference. And a lot of my arthritic patients are like, they buy that tea by the case. And in our doctor's implementation manual, we talk about doing sample packs. One of the reasons that people buy water machines is they do demos and they get samples and they try it for 30 days. Well, we have a 7-day sample pack that we use to get people to try the turmeric.
So what do you say actually to people when they buy them, once they've seen a demonstration? What do you say to people after they see the demonstration? What do you leave them? What do you tell them? I mean, I know that things are a little bit different nowadays as to when you first started, but what do you suggest?
With the implementation, and I deal mostly with doctors. I do have an online platform that I use for my disabled vets and my single moms to help them build in the online space. I actually have a lot of people, but my focus was that. But in the doctor's offices, they're trying the water, they're trying the turmeric, and it's going forward. And it's just a question of they're ready to buy. Most everybody that we deal with ends up buying what we call a trifecta because they want the K8, the shower unit, and the Ukon. Once you get financing, we've got it set up where they have a referral program. And so if you refer 10 people that do the same as you did, so if you buy a K8, you refer 10 K8s, you buy a trifecta, you refer 10 trifectas, your machine pays for itself. So it's buy 10, get one free, just like a punch card that you get at Dairy Queen. And so we use that system a lot. And we tell people that, look, if you're going to finance a K8, it's going to be $54 a month on a monthly payment. If you buy a trifecta, it's $104. And your whole family gets to benefit from it. And then we'll, over the course of the next year, because usually you can get 0% financing for 18 months. And so the goal is to help them get their 10 referrals so that their machine's actually free. They keep their cash on hand.
Okay. I'm going to go back real quick. And I talked to Ron Hicks about this for a while. And and if you can expound on this a little bit, because I wasn't able to really ask him a lot of questions about it. But his big thing was the importance of how important actually the pharmaceutical grade platinum is on the machine in making this water.
It's the price difference, actually.
What about the water?
You're just going to pay for that much. You're just paying for that much more platinum. And as I've already said, the cheaper plates, when you get any type of a current, they start to arc. And when they arc, they spit off pieces of platinum that you get to ingest. And so what you end up with is you have a device that you can poison your family with for a cheaper price, or you can actually have something that will manage the health and wellness of your family for the next 20 years.
Well, as far as metals are concerned, why is platinum the best to have the water run across and then to electrolyze the water?
It's just hard.
Okay.
It's unbearably hard.
Okay. All right. Well, is there anything else that you want to expound on or talk about that we haven't covered?
I'm here for you, man.
You
got any questions at the end? What do you think about filters for drinking water as well as bathing? I don't. I just use it because unofficially, if you start playing with your chems kit, you're going to find a lot of stuff comes out the acid line, whether the filter's in there or not.
Okay.
If I had really bad water, I would first move because I wouldn't raise my family where there's bad water because that's just poisoning them and you have to clean up the system after. But then you can get into pre-filtrations because some municipal water supplies just suck. They just do. I would never live in Flint River, Michigan because of the water. I wouldn't go visit there. I wouldn't hang out there. I wouldn't drink bottled water from there. I wouldn't swim there. I wouldn't shower there. I wouldn't live there. Because you got to realize your body is 72% water. You can screw up a lot of things, and it doesn't really matter because your body's 72% water. You screw up water, you're screwed.
Right.
From a health standpoint, the most significant thing you can do from an anti-aging health and wellness standpoint is water. So I weigh 202. I work out, muscular. I am 18 gallons of water. If I drink 4 of these a day, in 18 days, I've replaced 72% of my body by weight. If you bought any vehicle and they said, hey, we'll replace 72% of the parts on your car every month for $50, you'd be like, please. I mean, it's just, I hate to say it's a no-brainer because so many people just don't get it, but it's a no-brainer. Like,
yeah, that's how I was too, because I saw the demonstration. I heard 20 amazing testimonies. And when 4 of those testimonies were happening to me through deductive reasoning, those other 20 stories must be true. Therefore, this is the best machine I've ever seen in my life. And I had to have one. Just the competition and getting somebody saying, oh, I saw on the website or this website that's called Consumer Reports that the Tyant is better than the Enagic and it's cheaper. And, you know, and so to combat these questions is really important.
And I get that. But if you have people running a test that they don't know what they're testing, and somebody goes, well, they're using a chemical to get 2.5, and we don't use the chemical, and they test the pH, and they're both 2.5, but one's sulfuric acid, one is soda, and one is Dasani, you're like, I don't know, it's 2.5. Never mind. You just, if they don't know what they're testing, the results are going to be skewed.
And the other machines simply cannot make the 2.5 because it doesn't add, their machines can't add sodium to the water.
Say they make 2.5 water, make 2.5 water. They don't make hypochlorous acid. Because hypochlorous acid happens when you take cool. Cool. So if you break this, this is what's in your 11.5. Oh, there's that ammonia thing I was talking about.
So those of us who aren't good at chemistry, that's ammonia is NaC.
It's one of the HNA.
HNA is
a derivative of ammonia. It's a format. And then this right over here is hypochlorous acid, but it's electrolyzed hypochlorous acid, so it's 50,000 times more potent at 2.5 than the 4.5 that they talk about in a lot of your food industries. That's why it kills everything. I didn't write the chemistry. I hate chemistry, but that's just the way that it works.
Okay.
And so if you don't have a salt solution, you're not creating that.
So there you have it, everybody. Pretty much every machine on the market cannot make the 2.5. You can't even compare it.
Magic is the only company in the market that makes 2.5 hypochlorous.
I remember
there
you telling me
no other machines that produce that.
And I remember,
therefore, the R unit is a machine that we have that doesn't produce hypochlorous acid. There's no use for 2.5 water. None whatsoever. You
I
can't use
remember.
it as a sterilant. There's nothing to use to clean it with. It just doesn't work. It's a gimmick. And so every single machine on the market, Tyant's got $5,000 water machines. They're just trying not to talk about it. We're going to discount it to like $3,400. It's got 27 plates and 12 billion ORP that lasts for 20 minutes. But it doesn't produce hypochlorous acid, so it's not as important as functional as it's an R unit for $1,900. You just spent $1,600 too much. You got screwed. And everybody's knowing it now that we've had all our lockdowns and quarantines because they can't sterilize with what they've got.
I remember you told me a story about 6 years ago of a doctor that you're talking to, and you're telling him about the machine that makes hypochlorous acid, and he's like, "Oh, it must be $40,000." You said, "No, it's $4,000," and he went, "What?"
Yeah, the closest comparable size unit for our volume that comes out of a K8 is $8,000, but it's only 2.5. You don't get the 11.5. You don't get the drinking one. It is a designated 2.5, and it has a core that has to be replaced annually for $3,500.
Yeah, we got the bargain basement price. I know that Ron said he tried to duplicate this machine. I don't know if I should say that on here, but he did, and he spent over $20,000 just to make this machine, just like the Enagic machine. And he says this is a bargain price for what we have. With all the parts and everything, he said it was over $20,000 to make it. And here we are, as we're selling it. And that would, at that time, he's making the SD501. So
the cost of platinum is pretty outrageous.
Yeah.
Somebody asked the difference between alkaline, alkalized, bottled alkaline, and a reverse osmosis. One, reverse osmosis, nobody should drink it. It's poisonous. They use it and they sell it. It was originally designed for people on dialysis and for countries that had no clean water, that had access to seawater. John, you live in California. Have they or have they not had water issues and shortages throughout California? And you have the biggest freaking coastline of any state in the US.
Yes.
Why do you have a water issue? You have the whole Pacific right there. Because you can't use RO water extensively. It'll kill you. You've done your water test. You have to add something to it to compare it, make it produce electricity. But what happens is you put in 2 or 3 minerals, are like, oh, it's got a good pH now. No, it's still pulling out all those healthy minerals, all those electrolytes. That's why they use it for dialysis. If you look at the research, you should only drink RO water for a very intense detox for 14 days, 21 days under medical supervision, and that's it. And people are like, I'm just going to stick this up underneath my counter and kill myself slowly. But I added some minerals back. It doesn't make any sense. If you live in Flint River, Michigan, and there's lead in the water, yeah, you kind of need to do it, but move. I don't say that sarcastically. Move. You're poisoning your kids and stuff. Move. Alkaline water in a bottle has just got chemicals in it. The reason that electrolyzed reduced water has a pH shift is your ratio of hydroxide ions to H2. That's why it has a pH change. It doesn't chemically alter in the body. It's actually rapidly absorbed. As soon as you absorb the hydroxide ion, it goes into the cell and it pulls garbage and it's neutral. That's why it'll never build up in your tissues. All these bottled waters and remineralizers, when you look at an RO machine that has minerals in it before it gets to the concrete machine, what you're actually doing is ionizing minerals and making them much more permeable, except they're not usable by the body, so they get embedded in the kidneys, the heart, the cardiovascular system, and that's what the clinical research says. pH 2.5 by FDA standard is generated on site and used, single use, generated on site within 24 hours. I have no idea how long it lasts. I do it every 24 hours. Well, what if people want to just borrow 2.5? Good, they can buy a machine and get it fresh every 24 hours. Do you worry about all the Enagic plates eventually wearing off? I'm wondering if I could be 50 years worth of plates. No, I don't ever worry about that stuff. I've got a box of plates here. One from an Emcotech, one from a Jupiter, one from Alcoviva, one from Tyant, and one from us. And all the plates are 2 years old except for the Enagic, which looks brand new, and it's 6 years old. It just isn't.
And the metal, the microns, which is the measurement of amount of metal on the surface, ours is much thicker.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So would you say
a lot of them have a spray system now?
What's that?
A lot of them have a spray system, which is just terrifying. We have 3-directional spray. Like, I've used a spray can before, and I never get it all.
When you spray the metal onto another piece of metal.
Yeah, they've got an electroplating by spray.
Well, that's impossible, isn't it? Through electromagnetic plating, you got to take the plate, you got to stick it in liquid, and so it actually embeds it into the surface of the titanium.
I've pitched everything you can imagine. Navy ships make RO water since there's no way to keep fresh water on hand. Yep, they do. And that's why a lot of our poor people, military people, are so abused. They come back with all kinds of health issues.
All right. Well, we're just about out of time, so we're going to close it out here. And I want to thank everybody for being on here. I'm going to have the link on this on